Okay, welcome again, everyone, and thank you for coming to this afternoon's Choose Grad York session, a discussion panel with some current graduate students or current graduate scholars. So the event today will go from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We have three amazing students for you to learn from, to ask questions of. So we're really excited to have you hear from them, learn from them, and hopefully get a sense of what graduate school at York is like. Before we get started with the actual event content, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement to honor the caretakers of the land. If you have attended any York events in previous years, you may have seen a different version of our land acknowledgement, but we're really honored to have this brand new one put together in consultation with local Indigenous communities. So that being said, First Nations people have lived on this part of Turtle Island for millennia, stewarding the land, the water, and all that contributes to life in this region. Today, the culture and presence of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities enrich the lands and people of the territory. More than 2 centuries ago, the Mississauga people welcomed settlers to this territory, providing sustenance and engaging in trade and commerce. Today, York University campuses are located on the Toronto Purchase Treaty Number 13, lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the lands of the Anishinaabeg of the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our campuses are also located on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Treaty history is foundational, and it is our collective responsibility to honor the land as we honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We are grateful for the opportunity to be learning, working, and thriving on this land, and we commit to learn the truth and be active in the process of reconciliation. If you are not currently located in Toronto, I would invite you to have a look at the land acknowledgement and the land acknowledgement and history of the land that you are currently on. So with that being said, we will move into our main event, and that is our panel discussion, which will be led by our fearless leader, Uzma Khan, the Associate Director of Recruitment and Conversion, the Faculty of Graduate Studies at York. Uzma, take it away.
Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for calling me a fearless leader. I'd like to just debunk that quickly. I am sometimes fearful. All right, everyone, just a quick introduction. Again, my name is Uzma Khan. I am the Associate Director of Graduate Recruitment at the Faculty of Grad Studies at York University. This is a position I hold with deep prestige and honor, and I am so excited to have you all join and consider York University as the place that you'd like to consider for graduate education. And I'm now going to first of all, thank Eileen and Gabriella in the chat as well for all the support that they provide for recruitment. And you must have connected with them at some point in your application journey. I'm now going to go ahead and introduce our wonderful panelists who've taken some time out of their busy days to help connect with all of you and hopefully provide you enough insights to solidify your decision to join York University in the near future. Right. So first of all, we have Mercedes Veselka, who is a PhD student at York University in the Faculty of Education. She studies the intersection of adult literacy and language development, particularly focused on curriculum development and teacher experience and agency. She is the recipient of both SSHRC and OGS scholarships alongside the Chancellor's Medal from Carleton University. She is also a certified TESOL Ontario Education Language Educator with experiences teaching in community-based language programs in Ontario. Next up, we have Tanya Arbabian, who is in the Interdisciplinary Studies program at York University. Her project is about animation and its impact on young audiences. She focuses mostly on animated films between the 1980s and the 2000s. I hate to give it away, but yes, that is my age range, and I feel strongly with the work that she's doing here. She focuses mostly on animated films from that time, and apart from that, she's also discussing the merits of hand-drawn animation versus computer animation. The disciplines that she focuses on to speak on this subject are literature, art history, and film studies. This program has allowed her to write about a topic that she is quite passionate about, and thank you again just for my generation. And she may have not have had the chance to write about it with the interdisciplinary studies department previously, but animation is not spoken about enough in the academic space, and through this program, she has received the support necessary to speak on the impact of animation through an academic lens. Next, we have Tracy Jacko, who is Anishinaabe from the Sagamok Anishinaabeg First Nation located in central Ontario. She's been living in Toronto for over 15 years and keeping busy with work, school, and concert season. Professionally, she has worked as an Indigenous recruitment officer for a few different universities and has enjoyed building relationships with many Indigenous students and communities across Canada. She is currently finishing up her final year of the Master of Education program and will be starting her PhD this upcoming spring in York University. So thank you once again to our panelists. I am going to, go through the questions with everyone, and I will, direct them in order, and hopefully everyone will take a lot away from everyone's experiences. Okay. So the first question, which is going to be for all of you, and we will start with Mercedes, is that what made you decide to pursue graduate studies and why York University in particular?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. It's so fun to get to meet with and talk to all kinds of different scholars and all you in the audience who are like becoming scholars. I decided to do graduate studies because I worked as an adult literacy and language teacher. So I was working in a community-based program in Ottawa, which is where I'm from. And I just had so many questions. There were lots of problems that I was experiencing in my work as a teacher, and I really wanted to be able to explore them and to find some answers for things that I didn't think were happening, like in the field that I was working in. And so I met with some of the faculty members at Carleton University, which is where I did my undergrad, and we looked at all kinds of different programs, and I ended up choosing York, both because I wanted to have an interdisciplinary perspective, and in the Faculty of Education, it's quite an interdisciplinary faculty at York. There are scholars doing all kinds of work across a really wide range of areas, and I wanted to bring that perspective into my graduate studies. And the other reason was because they had some really interesting scholars doing work on arts-based and literacy in the Faculty of Education. And so that was an area of interest for me.
Wonderful. How about you, Tracy?
Thank you for that. So the way it kind of unfolded for me was I had been working as an Indigenous recruitment officer for a number of universities here in Ontario. And over the course of almost 18 years, I started to notice a lot of gaps within the programming that was offered, specifically within the transition from high school to university or post-secondary settings. So I decided that maybe I can go back to school and learn a little bit more about, the systems in place and things like that. And I discovered the program at York University offered through the Faculty of Education. So I enrolled in the Masters of Education, focusing on urban Indigenous education. And it has been so wonderful to meet so many like-minded students who share in their passion of working towards decolonizing education for Indigenous students across Canada and building those reciprocal relationships about reconciliation. So it's been a journey that actually led me to applying for a PhD where I will be furthering this type of research. And I'm so excited because Toronto's always been a second home to me. I love it here. I love the community, and I look forward to building those relationships and supporting students wherever I could. Thank you.
It's such a beautiful thought, and I really am excited to see the results of, the research that comes out of when you start your PhD. All right.
Thank you.
What about you, Tanya? What made you decide to pursue graduate studies, and then why York?
Well, my reasoning for pursuing graduate studies was quite simply because I did want to continue on with my studies after my bachelor's, but I also wanted to do something that was a little different because I was an art student in high school, but I sort of went down the more practical route of getting a humanities degree while I was at U of T for my bachelor's. And Um, One thing that I noticed a lot when applying for bachelor's or even when applying for master's is that there are very few animation programs in general, especially in Canada. And when I found the interdisciplinary studies department, it was a big deciding factor in me coming to York because since my work is rather niche in the academic circles, I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring the concept of animation into the academic space because usually people either view animation as more of just something child's play, or it's more in practical spaces, in practical programs. And most of the animation programs I have seen are for people to train to become animators, which is something that's very interesting, but also not enough people talk about the actual theory and the thought that goes into creating these films. Even when even when we look back at the older films, there's still so much that can be discussed as to why certain decisions were made because every single step of the animation process is a thought out decision. And another reason I chose York, which is just more of a fun personal coincidence, is that both of my parents actually went to York for their master's degrees, and they were actually living in the campus apartments when I was born. So technically, I was born at York, which was just a fun little like inside joke for the three of us. So that was just a fun coincidence, you know?
That is amazing, and that it was just meant to be from the start. You were always meant to come here at some point. We had to have you back. All right, let's move to the next question. So, and I think we'll just continue with you, Tanya, before we go to the other. So, do you have any application tips for folks who are considering applying to York in the near or later future?
To be honest, my biggest tip would just be start your process as soon as possible, as soon as you can, because it's not just, gathering documents that you might need that are readily available. It's writing your letter of intent, it's updating your resume, there's, the waiting for your transcripts, but the one part that is the most time consuming and and one of the most important parts, in my opinion, is making sure you have enough time to receive your reference letters, because not only do you need to make sure that the people you have in mind that could write you very good reference letters have the time to write them for you, but everyone gets busy, and especially application time usually falls during like exam time. So, so of course, professors get very busy during that time. So as soon as you could let them know that you can get your reference letter as soon as possible, or just ha let them have it ready for whenever your application is sent in. And and I would just say make sure that whatever you want to do for your master's, note that you are going to be studying this and this will be like all consuming to your mind for the next couple of years. So just make sure it's something that you know that you yourself care about enough to write about, because if you don't care about what you're writing, how are people supposed to care about what they're reading, you know?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for that. What about you, Mercedes? Any things that you now wish you could have done better?
Yeah, I think I mean I second everything that Tanya said about like making sure you take time and ask your references in advance. And I think in my faculty, we had to write a letter, like a document that was like our letter of intent, basically about what we wanted to study. And I would say if you have supportive people in your life or peers, or especially if you have faculty members, send it to them and ask them to review it. Because I got lots of really great and helpful feedback that made my letter and my um, like my confidence about going into the program stronger right off the bat. Because I think especially when you're thinking about like, what do I want to study? What do I want to write about? If you're going to be doing research in graduate school, it can feel really intimidating. And so having people to talk to about what you're thinking about, who are in your field, who are interested in your topic, that would be my first recommendation. The second thing I would also recommend is if you are going to be applying, just check out the course selections before you even apply to the university, and see if there are courses that are actually interesting for you to take. That was a really helpful thing that I did with some professors before I started at York, and it made me really A, excited to start the program, but B, also understand kind of what the context or layout of the graduate program would be, from like a everyday kind of perspective. Like, what kinds of courses would I be taking? What kinds of topics would I be able to explore? So,
Okay. And what about you, Tracy, especially, with the recent PhD application?
Well, it's a journey, absolutely. Echoing what my co-facilitators here have shared is pay attention to the deadlines. I came close, um, considering I had done years of recruiting. You think I would know better, but those deadlines did creep up very, very fast. So remember to pay attention to that. But I would also like to echo something Mercedes shared. When you are writing your letter of intent, always be sure to include those really unique features about yourself. A lot of people tend to base their letters about their academic gifts and, their strength and things like that. But also write about all those amazing things that you've done that have led you to this path. So, like, if you're into reading, writing, journaling, music, those things really help shape who you are as an individual and really impact the type of research that you're going to do within your program. And just connect with the faculty members, connect with other students. And it's really important to visit the campus as well. See if you see yourself there, check out some of the classrooms, check out some of the labs, whatever program that you're applying to. Just really get a feel for the sense of the school to make sure that it is the right fit for you, because anything can look and sound great within a book or online, but you're never going to know until you actually set foot in like the actual setting. So those are the tips that I would like to just pass on. And yeah, I think everyone else pretty nailed it for everybody.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
I think that sometimes, as especially if you are already doing a program or if you're working part-time or full-time, it's important to keep the deadline in mind. But my advice, just add on there, is always make sure that, push the deadline up for yourself personally because anything can happen. Technology can fail, you can, lose documents, things can happen. So try not to be that person who's, submitting things at the very end, right? And give enough time to your referees. Also have a backup for your referees, right? Just in case something happens, someone is traveling, they're called in a conference or something, so that you're not losing out because somebody else is busy, right? Treat your application as the most important thing because it is a stepping stone into a different future that you envision to kind of see yourself in, right? And I've asked Eileen to put in some other helpful things in the chat from previous sessions that we've had at the Faculty of Grad Studies that future applicants might find helpful as well. Okay, the next question is for Mercedes. So just talking a little bit about, did you apply for any scholarships and awards and, what was the overall experience like, kind of, the whole research and figuring out what was the right fit for you and how did you go about it?
yeah, for sure. So, there are basically in my field, there are two main like significant grants from the government. One of them is called SSHRK. So it's SSHRK, the social, or SRC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. And there's another one called the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, or OGS. And I applied for both of those during my master's. And then again, I'm in the first year of my PhD, so I just applied for it again for my PhD program. And I did receive it in my master's program. And my biggest piece of advice is that these applications, the master's one is due in December and the PhD one is due in October. So if you are entering graduate school, you really do not have a lot of time. And that can feel quite overwhelming, especially if you're a new PhD student, and then like also if you're a new master's student. So I would say like start in the summer. Think about as you draft your letter of intent for applying, you have that if you get into the program, you have to think about applying to these things very early because it takes a really long time to write a grant proposal. It takes a lot of practice. Ask your faculty or the the Faculty of Graduate Studies, if they have templars or examples of successful applications. I'm happy to share the one I wrote for my master's. If people would like to email me, I can pop my email in at the end. But those it's really helpful to see like every person's application looks different, right? So we don't all write the same thing because we're not all the same kinds of people, but grant writing is a very specific kind of genre of writing, and it takes a really long time to kind of get good at it. And I'm still like working on it. So, I would say like think about that application process as early as possible. The guidelines for sure come out in like July around that time, but there's lots of information that York has and the Faculty of Graduate Studies has on applying to these scholarships if that's something you're interested in. And they are very worth it. They give you quite a lot of money. So it's definitely worth applying. And it's also really good practice. For kind of figuring out if you are interested in research and you're still trying to figure out what you want to do, writing for this kind of a grant really help me to clarify, like, what is it I really want to say? What is it I really want to do? So, yeah.
Perfect. Yes, and we've popped some information in the chat for our future scholars. Hopefully, you'll find all of this information. Again, it's just great resources to tap into. Okay. The next question is going to be for Tanya and then Mercedes. So just if you could describe your working relationship with your graduate supervisor and the supervisory committee, how did you find them, and what is their role, and other things like how often do you meet, do you communicate, anything helpful?
Should I go first?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to try to be as concise as possible about this, but I had a lot of good things to say about my committee, because honestly, all three members of my supervisory committee are amazing to work with because not only are they available to answer any questions I might have, but they're also very supportive of my work. And especially since I check in with them often enough that whenever I'm just updating them on how my work is going, even if I have no major updates or drafts, I just keep them in the loop about what's going on. And I've never had any issues with my committee, and communication has also never been a problem either. And just a little piece of advice for anyone who's coming into like the master's program, or uh, just do not forget to check in with your committee because they are busy, but even if they are busy, they will eventually get back to you. And keeping in touch, even just through email, just keeps them in the loop. Even if it takes a while for them to get back to you, they'll know like, oh, okay, like they're my student's doing well. Okay, they haven't disappeared into thin air. So just make sure you do that. And in terms of how I found my committee, I found them simply by emailing around to different uh, professors and just simply asking because I didn't know any professors at York and because I did my bachelor's at UFT in Mississauga. And in fact, one of my supervisors is actually from Wilfrid Laurier because her focus is also in animation. So she was a big help in terms of, you know, being sort of like being someone who really did understand what my project was about. And to be honest, because my work is rather niche, the reason I got so many rejections was from other professors. They were just simply kind enough to say that they didn't know enough about my topic to feel that they could be a help to me in any way, despite how interesting they found what my work was. Uh, and your committee doesn't have to be in the exact same field, especially the more niche you get with your work. And as long as they have an understanding about your topic, they'll be able to help you no problem. And their role in my work has mostly been, giving me feedback on my thesis and, edits that I could make, the the basic stuff and telling me what I'm missing, what I should add, just even just sometimes reminding me, you're rambling on here, make sure make sure to be more concise with your words. But they've also been a big help with my creative component, which is a minute-long teaser trailer for a potential animated film that could someday exist, and as well as a small art of booklet for the work that I'm doing. And their feedback and advice has just always helped my work drastically. And my work has always just been moving forward and thankfully has never actually gotten stuck to a point where, we're emailing back and forth and they keep saying, you're not getting it or anything. Like we communicate very well with each other, so I'm always just moving forward, which has been very helpful. Another benefit of good communication. At this point in my work, we do communicate mostly through email. And my work has become fairly independent at this point. However, whenever a Zoom meeting is needed, whenever I need to speak to them directly, it is very easy to arrange times with them, and which is something I'm really grateful for because, just everyone is always so busy. University life gets very busy. That's something you will find the higher up in education you go, just how busy it gets. So just it's great, but just know just know that, it's, you're a busy bee.
Okay. What about you, Mercedes? Oops, there might be. Sorry, Mercedes, do we still have you?
Sorry. Yeah, I
No
think
worries.
my screen just froze for a second. Amazing. Yeah, I love everything Tanya said. And completely agree that having a good relationship with your supervisor really makes a big difference in how you feel, I think, in graduate studies, especially because research um, can be it's a lot of independent work. You're doing a lot of thinking. It can feel like you're going 2 steps forward and then 5 steps back as you kind of process and learn new things. So I will start this advice by saying, give yourself a lot of grace that, research is difficult and it requires a lot of good communication and support. And so I found my supervisor for my master's degree in a similar way to Tanya. I just emailed faculty before I started at the university. I looked through their profiles. I looked at their recent publications to see what kind of areas of interest they have and what kinds of things they're writing about right now, because sometimes what's in their bio is something that maybe they were researching 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but maybe isn't updated to what their interests are currently. So even just skimming the abstracts of a couple of their recent publications can be helpful. And then don't feel scared to email faculty. They get emails all the time. They don't think you're weird or cringy or bizarre. It's okay. It's very normal. They get those emails all the time. And as Tanya pointed out, a rejection is often just because your areas of research are not aligned. It's not anything personal about you and your ability to do research. So you just have to find a faculty member who's the right fit for you. The other thing I will say is, just be in communication and make sure that you have clear expectations with your supervisor from the beginning. What is their supervisory style? Every professor's looks different. And so some things might not be aligned with what you need, and that's okay. You can always find someone or have a committee member step into that role in a way that makes more sense for you. The structure of my committee is that there's a supervisor and then there was one committee member for my master's thesis and then an external member who joined later. And so, but I would say start with just finding one person and your supervisor will support you in being able to add more people to your committee. So you don't have to feel stressed and email 1,500 people to try and get your whole committee right from the beginning. Just start with one supervisor, someone who you think you'd be aligned with. I would just say be clear about how often you would like to meet with them and in what ways you would like to communicate, and ask them what their typical email response times are. So you're not in your head thinking that they don't like you or don't like an email that you sent. It just helps to alleviate a lot of anxiety if you just communicate right in the first meeting about what your supervisory style is. And if you want to look up questions and stuff like that, there are lots of resources online. And I think York also has some that you can just look for checklists or supervisory student questions, questions to ask your supervisor in your first meeting. There's lots of resources from graduate students who've posted all this kind of stuff on blogs and online. So definitely use those resources.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much. Okay, next question is for Tracy. What suggestions would you want to give to new graduate students so that they can thrive in their studies?
I'm sorry, could you, sorry, repeat that? My
Right, no,
computer
no
just
worries.
like
Okay,
blinked
so
on
the
me.
question is, what suggestions would you have to give to new graduate students so that they can thrive in their studies?
Oh, cool. This one is a fun one. I'm all about this. So one thing I would really recommend is getting connected with the community at your school. Reach out to student groups, even alumni, because they've gone through the program and they're there to support you, and it really gives you that sense of belonging. As other people have mentioned, that when you do your research, it can be very isolating at times because most of it is done independently, and that's what I'm going through right now, finishing my thesis, my MRP. I'm like, where is everybody? I'm so used to being engaged in the classroom, in discussion, and being part of student groups and work, and that is the fun part. But you take all of that in when you're doing your research, and you start to feel a little alienated at times, and can get a little dull. So you have to be proactive in getting back into the school setting, stepping into student groups, and just becoming part of events that are happening. And also reach out to student services on campus, get involved. There's a lot of great supports that exist on campus for anybody, whether you're graduate student, undergrad, anyone that's just studying. It's just basically all about getting involved and making the most of your experience and just learning from others. I think that's really, really important, and just staying focused and having a good time. Like, enjoy it. You're gonna love it. It's a lot of fun.
I think that's terrific advice, and especially for people who might be, coming locally, but also if you're coming from other parts of the province or other parts of the country or from overseas, trying to build that tribe while you were, trying to do your, your master's or your PhD. It's important because as tough as that time looks during that time, you will look back and you will remember the hours in the library, but you'll also remember who you spent it with, right? So I think it's great that you're saying, reach out and kind of build your community at the same time. It does help, especially when the weather is severe, or you kind of feel like you just need another human, for a little bit of company or for a review. Okay. Next question, which I will give first to Mercedes and then to Tracy, is what was the most surprising part of graduate school for you?
All right, is that question for me? Okay, perfect. Sorry, my thing paused again. So, yeah, what was the most surprising part? I think just as Tracy said, how much fun it is. Obviously, like any endeavor, it's not fun every day all the time. So that's, I don't want to set that expectation, but one of the most surprising and wonderful things about graduate studies is all the wonderful people that you meet in your classes and you meet through faculty events and being able to attend. I highly recommend attending, like, the university holds all kinds of open talks in all kinds of areas of research. Go to those, even in things that you are like, wow, that's like a really niche presentation. Some of my talks I've been to are not things that are in my field. Um, so I just really enjoyed that. Um, Being able to meet new people and being able to explore and learn together is just the best part of graduate school.
Well, what about you, Tracy?
Well, so many wonderful things. I agree with what Mercedes said. But one thing that really caught me off guard was how unique you can tailor your research. So I graduated from my BA at Laurentian University generations ago. Okay, not that long ago. So I graduated in 2007. And when I was there, I can't say I was the strongest student. I really kept to myself and did my thing, did my schoolwork. But when I went to graduate school, I was so amazed about how I could really focus on the research that I was interested in. So the courses that I took have a syllabus. You have your readings, you have your course material, but you can really tailor that to your experiences, to what you want to focus on, and then, you know, work around that. And I think that's a really beautiful thing because it really brings out who you are as an individual, and it really kind of like hones down on that research of what you can give back to a community. So it's all about discovering who you are as an academic person, as a researcher, and what you want to give back. And I kind of feel that that didn't happen for me in my undergrad. I was more learning the skills of a student, but I really flourished as a professional in the program. So that was one thing that caught me off guard. I didn't expect that to happen. I heard about research and how, challenging it could be, but it was also a really beautiful process. So um, I look forward to, hearing more people's research and just learning more about their journeys. That's a beautiful part.
And so that's a perfect segue into the next question, which I had for you, which was actually the biggest challenge that you experienced in graduate school. So do you think that it is returning to education after a while, or kind of just also figuring out if this is the right step, honing your research?
Well, so my career actually was focused around education to begin with. I worked as an Indigenous recruitment officer, so helping Indigenous students transition into post-secondary studies. But one of the biggest challenges was for me was letting go of that type of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and getting into the academic world. So relearning academic reading, academic writing, and the demands that you really have to place on yourself to be structured, to be accountable for your time management and things like that. It's really different. It was a bit of a shift because I hadn't been a student since 2007. But as I mentioned before, reaching out for different supports, connecting with your supervisor, and just asking for advice on, how to cope with things like that. That's really helped me along the way. And the financial strain was a little bit of a shock. But there are so many resources that the university had offered for me to handle that, so I didn't have to worry about, finances while I was focusing on research. So yeah, things like that really, really helped me. And I have nothing negative to say. Like I really enjoyed my experience, and I look forward to moving forward next into the PhD program.
It's amazing. Okay. Next question is for Tanya and then for Mercedes. What does an average day look like for you as a graduate student, and how do you kind of still perfect? Hopefully, the rest of us can find out this secret as well, but balancing school and life. Tanya, you can go first.
Okay. So it is a difficult task balancing school and life, especially as a graduate student. I feel like it is vastly different from when you're in your bachelor's and just sort of, as Tracy mentioned, the 9 to 5 aspect, even as a university student, you do still have a set schedule to to sort of focus on. But but for me, I would say my average day after a long time of practice and my average day when I don't have meetings with my supervisors or any sort of classes or anything that's unusual from what I normally do, I try to get some exercise in the morning if I can, because honestly, that really does help with your productivity during the day. At least for me, it does. Whether it's, taking a walk or doing something intense. Then I try to work for a couple hours before having lunch, and then because my work is creative, there is also a fun aspect of it for me. So then I work until about 7 or 6 if I'm planning to actually make something for dinner, and then I just work as much as I can after dinner, and that's a regular day of work for me. And sometimes I'm working until 10. Sometimes if I'm in a flow state, I'm working until 3 a.m. because I didn't realize what time it is. Um, but the hardest balance for me is really just getting a decent amount of sleep at regular hours, because sometimes, when you get in the zone, you want to get it done before you get out of that flow. And if I have plans with friends and family, or even sometimes, when you unexpectedly fall ill for whatever reason, I hope nobody does, but that's life. Just try to make sure you're able to work around it, that if you somehow end up losing a full day of work, it doesn't set you back in any way. And just remember to prioritize what part of your work needs to come first, and or figuring out what you can easily finish and get out of the way, because that can actually help in those unexpected circumstances, especially when in case you get a cold or whatever. And I would say in terms of balancing, life, like life with people, the people in your life and everything, is just to is try to set boundaries with them as much as you can. It's so difficult to do, especially since technically you can schedule your life all you want, but to the outside world, it might look like you have all the free time in the world. Um, so, if you can't simply do spontaneous outings with friends or last minute family gatherings, just try to communicate that when you start. And just tell them because of your work, you just need a heads up so you can rearrange your schedule so that you're not falling behind, but also you make it clear like, hey, I do want to, participate in all this, but just I need the heads up because my work has to come first. And, there is nothing wrong with putting your work and yourself first. You deserve to do that. And the people in your life, they care about you. So they'll understand that like, hey, if you need a week's notice, if you need a few days' notice so we can hang out together, that's cool. I mean, I've been fortunate enough that my uh friends and family are like that. So that's my advice.
That's wonderful. What about you, Mercedes?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna I'll talk about a little bit what my average day looks like, but I want to say right up off the top that I don't have a lot of family caretaking responsibilities. I don't have children. And this does make a really I'm able to do this full time and I don't have to really work a lot of extra jobs that are outside of my university life. And I think that has a really big impact on what your day-to-day schedule will look like. And everyone is different. In my cohort in the PhD, many of my classmates and peers are working full-time or working part-time and doing PhD full-time. So there's lots of different ways that this can look for different people. So I do want to just say right off the bat, your schedule is gonna my biggest piece of advice is your schedule has to work for you and it has to balance the things that are in your life. So we're all coming from different positions when we talk about that. My average day often looks like I get up and Tanya, I try to move my body first thing in the morning. I'm someone who does kind of most of my really deep thinking work. I like to write or read first thing in the morning. That's how I like to do it. In the afternoon, my brain starts to get fuzzy, and so I usually try and save my admin tasks. I'm a teaching assistant at the university, so responding to emails, marking, those kinds of things I like to save till the afternoon because my brain is a little bit more able to go that way. But for you, that might be different depending on what time of the day your brain likes to work at. And then I usually try to work until between 5 and 7 p.m. every day. I make sure that I take off fully off at least one full day a week. And I make sure that I have several evenings a week that are just for me to read, to do my hobbies, and to be with people. I also regularly schedule coffee times with other people in the PhD program or co-working dates. Highly recommend. I try and do this a couple times a week with different people. And I think it just really helps you to get work done. It's also fun to build community. And that has to be for me a part of my regular work life. Being able to build community has to be part of my routine. Otherwise, I forget about it. And then I stay in my house too much, and then it's not good for my mental health. So, yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice is think about how you like to work. One of the best parts of graduate school is you do have a flexible schedule. There's a lot of work to do, but it's flexible. So find out where do you like to work? How do you like to work? What makes you excited? Are you someone who needs a lot of time to get into something, but once you're there, you're there for 10 hours? Block days to do that. If you're someone who likes to pick at things over time, schedule an hour here and there to do things, and don't let other people tell you how to work the best way. There's lots of advice in academia about that. And you really I would advise you to pay attention to what works best for you and be playful. Try it out this week, try it out that week, and see what works best for you. And be open to it changing because your life will change and your demands on your time will change. So Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. And thank you once again to all of our panelists. So these were the questions that I have. And now we have some amazing students' questions that Eileen is going to go through, and then she's going to ask you to answer them. Just going to make sure that hopefully we can address as many of them as we can. And if not, then obviously please reach out to ftsapply@yorku.ca and we can hopefully answer the rest. All right, Eileen, you can take it away.
Okay. Yes, we have dozens of questions coming in, which is great. All of our attendees are very engaged. If as a panelist you are open to people emailing you, if you could put your question, or sorry, put your email in the chat, we can certainly then they can reach out to you directly. So we've answered a couple. One is about admissions decisions. If you haven't got a decision, you need to connect with your program. So just for that, it's not something that we would be able to answer. All graduate decisions are made at the program level. A question, this is kind of an amalgamation of several questions. If you could do one thing differently, what would you do? Or are there any like mistakes that you made that stand out to you that you would advise people to do differently? And you certainly don't have to answer this if you don't have an answer. But looks like Mercedes is being unmuted, mean you're wanting to answer?
I can answer.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the main thing I would do different is early on in my program to be a lot kinder to myself about the adjustment. It's you're learning not just learning a bunch of new content, you are learning how to be a graduate student, which is different from other kinds of students. And so be kind to yourself, be kind to other people who are around you, also trying to figure it out and figure out how you can support each other and support yourself.
Okay, Tracy, looks like I'll take the unmuting as I'd like to answer this. So if it's otherwise, please tell me, but if not, go for it.
One of the things that I wish I had done right from the get-go was pay particular attention to resource materials that stood out to me, that really focus on my research, because I would I read something like when I first started, and then now that I'm going back to doing my thesis, I'm like, where was that? And what was that about again? And I have to go back and reread it and re-summarize. So I kind of wish I did better note taking and paying particular attention to those resources that really, really stood out. So if you have the chance to do that, I would highly recommend just putting it aside and maybe doing a little summary of your own based on your research. It's a time saver, really.
Awesome. Okay. This is, and I know, Tanya, I'm not sure of your future plans, but this is definitely a question for anyone who is considering, or in the case of Mercedes who's in it, or Tracy who's going to be starting. At what point during your master's did you start to reach out about the PhD, or did you always know that you were going to do it, or just started formulating your research topic? Just at what point did that occur, and how did you go about doing it?
I can start. I'd also love to hear Tracy's thoughts on this. I started thinking about this. I did not know from the beginning. I thought I was going to take a break between my master's and my PhD. And I decided kind of at the end of my first year, once I had started doing my data collection, that I really liked this and that I thought I would probably want to continue. I already had ideas for like what I wanted to do next. Because I was like, you know, I want to do this. Like the thing I'm doing now is cool, but I really think it needs to keep going. And I was really lucky to work with several professors in the faculty, and my now supervisor was someone I worked as a research assistant for. And so I was able to develop that relationship, and we just kind of had it as an ongoing conversation. So there's really no like too late other than the deadlines. And it's also okay to take breaks, like as you sort out if you want to. I will say like it was a little bit stressful to be thinking about applying to the PhD program while I was still writing my master's thesis. And so if you are someone who's like, you know what, I want to focus really on this thing, it's okay to like take a year and then work that next year on your application. But I started thinking about it like in the summer. So the application would have been due in like January, February. And I started thinking about it in the summer prior to that.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely key that it's never too late. It's okay to take breaks. I get a question so often that is, am I too old for graduate school? And I say, absolutely not. No such thing. Also, if your age begins with a two, definitely not there. Like that's a lot of people in that same boat. But we had someone and they were featured in the Toronto Star. I don't know her name or program off by heart, but it was a grandmother or a great grandmother in her 80s who had just finished her master's. So, um, yeah, a really cool story. I wish I knew the information off the top of my head, but I always reference her when people are like, "Am I too old?" And I say, "Absolutely not, even if you have three digits in your age." Um, there's a lot of questions, and I'm not exactly sure who this applies to. So we'll see if there's anyone who's willing to answer. Um, a lot of questions about transitioning from industry to academia, coming back to school after decades out of school, and a little bit about coming from another country, which I don't think is applicable to anyone. But yeah, just like, and Tracy, you mentioned kind of the financial shock a little bit that happened for you, but any other perspectives on that would be great.
Um, I love this question because I do get asked about this quite often. So I had been out of school since 2007 and I had, really adjusted to life with a job and things like that. But the transition, um, it kind of happened naturally. I was approached by some professors within the university who shared that they have this program at York University, and the program kind of it was a natural transition from the work I was doing into the research that I was interested in, and I didn't think that would be possible. So when I reached out to some of the professors, they were really kind and open to share the possibilities that surrounded the area of research that I was interested in focusing on. And it really blossomed into where I am now. I did not think that I would ever be doing a PhD, just because of the guidance of the professors and the staff and the community that I've been doing work in. Um, it really it was like a natural progression. And it's something that I hold very dear to my heart, the work that's necessary for Indigenous people and, working within deconstructing colonial boundaries in the school systems. It's a long history within my family as well as many friends. So I think that work is really, really important. And it's something that I'm committed to doing. And I don't feel like it's work. It's just something that I need to do. But going back I'm in my almost mid 40s now. I find I am a lot more structured as a student, a lot more disciplined. I'm still working on the time management piece, but it all comes with, learning through life. I've always believed that life learning is lifelong, and um, we just grow with it. And that's what I would recommend. Don't have any fear. Just go. If learning is what you want to do in academia, go for it.
So thanks for sharing. Sounds like it's kind of at this point more of a calling, really, than just like a schooling situation. Tanya, this one is for you. What is the most fulfilling, or what has been the most fulfilling part of your experience in graduate studies?
Oh wow, that could be a loaded question. The most fulfilling part about graduate studies for me, I think, to be honest, this might sound very silly in some respects, but it made me realize that how smart I am because for the longest time I just assumed I was just like very average intelligence and everything until I saw my grades and I'm like, wait a minute. No, I actually can't I actually do well in school, even though obviously I did well in school. That got me into the master's program. But I think, other than that, I think the most fulfilling part has been, you I'd like sort of a part two to that has been, seeing that something that I'm passionate about that, really means something to me is something that other people might also be interested in, something, and what I have to say isn't just, fanciful talk. It's actually deep, deep and legitimate and, gets people thinking. I mean, I've even had people like for like the people who have read my work or have read what I'm doing, like my supervisors, sometimes I get into these deep conversations about these animated films that I never thought I would have in an academic sense, and it's really fulfilling because I'm like, Yeah, so but what I thought about animation in academia could actually come to fruition, and that's really cool.
I love that. There's nothing like a positive thing where it's like, oh, you're reinforced that your skills, like you do have those. You are smart. You are capable. Okay, second to last question. Okay. I don't know if this actually applies to any of you, so let me know if it does. But two people have asked about interviews. So if you had to go through an interview as part of your admissions process, just do you have any tips for that? And again, I'm not sure if it applies to, or if any of you had that experience. Sure, Tanya, go for it.
Yeah, I did. I had a Zoom interview because I applied in, late 2021, 2020, early 2022 when I was in my last year of my bachelor's. But basically the tip I would have is just arrive early, know what you're talking about. Remember that since you're planning on going into your master's, you know this subject better than anyone because the higher up you get in education, the more specific your topics get to what you know, what you're passionate about. So just remember that the interview is more so to prove that you know what you're talking about, you know what you're going to be writing about, and just getting to your meeting early sometimes actually help in case there are any technical issues or any, scheduling issues. Your department knows that this is important to you. So that's what I would have in mind.
For sure. Okay, so this last one is kind of a free-for-all for anyone who is interested, and it's gonna be our last question of since we're coming up on one. Um, but is there anything that you would recommend doing between now and the start of your program to prepare, to get ready, to make that transition easier? Anything you have to suggest or any advice for that?
Can I go first?
Of course.
Speaking from someone who was out of academia and school for a long time and preparing to start the master's program, I would recommend read. Start reading. Read for fun. Just get back into the practice of reading because when you start, that's all you're going to be doing. Reading, reading, and writing. Um, I actually discovered that I like journaling, and I never really did that prior to going back to school. And my journals really help me reflect on the work that I've done and where I want to go. So start reading if you have time. That's what I can recommend.
I love that. Great life advice too. Even if anyone, well, I mean, everyone on the call is going to grad school, but you can never go wrong with reading. Anyone else?
I will just echo that and say, like, try and have a little habit or routine in your life, that is reading or writing or any kind of like, and this can look really broadly, like read graphic novels, explore your curiosities, develop, a habit of curiosity, whatever that means to you, because it will really help you stay grounded when you're in grad school. You will already have this habit and it will give you something to come home to. And the other thing I think is it also helps you to build those habits and practices and skills that you need for graduate school work.
Mm. Okay, and Tanya, you said you wanted to say something as well?
Yes, just quickly, just going off of what Mercedes and Tracy have said, reading really helps, but especially if, say, for example, like me, my thesis was originally just a hobby that I enjoyed before, and just make sure as you're reading, if it's something you enjoy reading about, like I enjoy reading about animation, make sure you're reading up on like new material that's come out. Not just, it doesn't have to just be articles. It can be new books that have come out, new biographies, or even like these, or even like in terms of animation, like the art of booklets where they showcase like the artwork and the concept art that went into it. There's also a lot of information in there, so just read as much as you can, and just remember, like, even if you know so much about your topic, you can always learn more. There is never a limit to what you can learn, and sometimes learning more actually helps in creating a better thesis for your work. Because there will be angles you never thought about. And also, just again, echoing what they've said, just read what you enjoy because sometimes that just really helps. Like, if you like tell yourself, okay, if I finish this part of my work, I get to read one chapter of this book, and make reading a reward for yourself if it's not already.
I love that. Now, does it count if I'm reading The Babysitter's Club to a child? Does that count if towards my reading goals?
If you're enjoying it too, why not?
Excellent point of view. Unrelated to the panel, but I had to say it. So thank you to all of our panelists for sharing so much about yourselves and your journeys, your experiences. All of them have said that they are open to receiving emails because there were some really specific questions in the chat that we just couldn't fit into the session today. But you're welcome to email them at their York emails. They're in the chat there. I'm going to really quickly go over Faculty of Graduate Studies social channels. We do have Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, LinkedIn. There's a lot of YouTube videos, particularly that we've shared. They're all available on that channel in particular that are about applying or current student research or applying for scholarships, applying for grants, awards, 3-minute thesis, anything like that. And then if you want to reach out about anything, whether that is your application, about course select, like anything between now and September, if we can't answer, we will refer you to the department that can. The email is fgsapply@yorku.ca. So F is in Frank, G, S is in Sam, apply@yorku.ca. So thank you everyone for attending. Thanks again to our panelists, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.